Alright, I would say it's officially cold out here. We've hit December, and today's video is going to be about temperature. More specifically, how it affects oysters. This is a graph of temperatures around here over a few years. We can see that the coldest months were probably February and March here, with the low 6 degrees Celsius. And up here are our highest temperatures, or hottest months, which unsurprisingly, the hottest one is August, with a high of around 26-27 degrees Celsius. Right now, we're looking at about 9.3 degrees Celsius in our water today. At this time of year, you may have noticed the water get a little clearer. That's because there's just less bacteria and less phytoplankton in it. And you might be like, well, less phytoplankton, that's less food for oysters. But the thing is, around 9 degrees Celsius, aka 48 degrees Fahrenheit, oysters actually go dormant. So they're feeding less on their own. Their growth significantly slows down. Really all cellular processes for the oyster decrease in speed. Their shells can also close to retain a little heat, because it traps a little water inside when they close it. So for like brief freezing periods, they can retain a little heat that way. And at 6 degrees Celsius, oysters are unable to feed. Water completely stops being pumped through their gills. And at this point in the year, oyster larvae have attached to their surfaces if they're gonna survive. And that attaching usually happens within 2 weeks after fertilization. And once they attach, they're called spat. These spat have gotten a little help because they are for the Seven Rivers Association Restoration Reef. But here's what they look like. And overall, again, not much is going on for them right now. They're dormant, so with less predation, less growth, zero spawning. And over the next thing that we're really having for them is over 2 months in the spring, triggered partially by temperature, spat start to develop gonads. And then from June to September, they spawn. Again, triggered partially by rising temperatures, usually temperatures between 20 degrees and 30 degrees Celsius. And this is when their food is most abundant. And basically both sexes release their gametes into the water column, with millions of eggs and sperm per spawning event. And by chance, the sperm and egg join and they become a zygote, which multiplies to form a larvae, which then attaches to a hard surface such as a rock, or let's say like a recycled oyster shell. Any surface. Really? That's, I don't know, that's solid. To become spat. Also, fun facts, oysters are called protandric hermaphrodites, or they are protandric hermaphrodites because they change sexes over their lifetime. All of them start as males, so they'll release sperm for probably like 2 years. And then they turn female. Most of them turn female, which is pretty cool. At higher temperatures, their oysters, and really like all organisms, metabolic rates rise. So that means that the rate of chemical reactions inside their cells increases. And that's because enzymes are more efficient at higher temperatures, but it's also because the higher your temperature, the more kinetic energy you have. So enzymes and substrates move more, so the chance that they interact is higher with higher temperature, which again means the metabolic rate goes up. Yeah, and oysters can tolerate some heat, so I mean, they even have heat shock proteins that help out. But at very high temperatures, let's say like with global warming, the metabolic rate continues to decline, but oxygen levels continue to decline, because in higher temperatures, like oxygen capacity I'll put that word on the screen when I'm looking for, declines. So like water's ability to retain oxygen goes down with higher temperatures. So again, with a higher metabolic rate, there's a higher demand for ATP to fuel the reactants, but there isn't sufficient oxygen in the water to be part of making that ATP. This is called not having enough oxygen is called hypoxia. It can be deadly for oysters and most things. Eastern oysters can live in about 28 to 90 degree Fahrenheit water, which is a wide range, which like oysters are called eurythermal because of that. And in Round Bay, I measured water temp at what is in Fahrenheit 89.6 degrees, which is basically 90 degrees Fahrenheit, this past August, which is something to watch out for. Is our water temperature becoming so high that it's dangerous for oysters. There is evidence to suggest, which I'll say, that oysters have circadian rhythms that change during the year, which means their circadian rhythms shift as it goes from warmer to colder. And in the warmer months, they're diurnal, which means they're awake during the day. And in the winter, they're nocturnal, which means they're awake during the night time. When it's spring or in summer, they're most active during the day. And the day is not only when it's lighter outside, but it's when it's a little bit warmer. And this is another example of when it's warmest, oysters are the most active, even within a single 24-hour period. It's also really cool to see that oysters have circadian rhythms, considering they obviously don't have eyes, so they can't see the light, but there's evidence to suggest that they have light receptors on their mantle and other areas of them. Them having circadian rhythms also, I'm gonna check my notes, means they are affected by light pollution, which obviously disrupts circadian rhythms. But artificial light disrupting the circadian rhythms of oysters does indicate that temperature is not what drives, like temperature change is not what drives when they're awake, because artificial light obviously does not produce heat, but it still wakes the oysters up. That being said, and this is my own hypothesis, oysters could have adapted to have light sensitivity or to have a circadian rhythm in order to be able to be more productive and more awake when their metabolic rate is able to be high, which would be in warmer times, or like warmer parts of the 24-hour period. Just for like a recap, just as land animals are less active or maybe hibernate over the winter because there's less food and there's slower metabolic rate, oysters do a similar thing. They go dormant. Feeding rate slows, spawning, gonad development completely doesn't happen, and growth rate slows. So everything nearly stops for oysters until March, when gonad development for spat begins, and oysters spawn from June to September. And then they begin gaining more mass for their dormant season in the winter again, which is part of the reason why a good time to eat oysters, you may have heard, is in the R months, the months containing the letter R, which are the colder months. In those months, they're better to eat because they aren't spawning. So they're supposed to be a little bit more watery and have less mass as well during their spawning season. And again, in the colder months, they've fattened up for their dormant period, so that's partially why they have more mass. Additionally, in warmer months, they're more susceptible to disease, like those heat proteins that I mentioned earlier. Those diseases that attack those proteins are more prevalent in warmer months too. So anyway, like any oyster disease is going to be more active in warmer waters, just like all life is more active, and that's a heron. Okay, those behind me are not hairs, but I heard a hair. The chances that you're actually going to be poisoned by an oyster because you ate it in a warmer month is low. Okay, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy this video about how temperature affects oysters, and look out for a POV dunking oysters video, which is what you do to like clean your spat if you're restoring oysters. And also look out for the next water quality, aspects of water quality videos on my channel. Okay, bye. It is actually cold out here. Appropriate for the video.